So welcome to day two. Day two is your deadlift and carry day. Now before you start your specific warm-up, before you go into your deadlift, as we did on day one, on our specific press day, you're going to go through some mobility and some activation drills. And I think it's worth just reiterating at this point, second day into your program, that we're not stretching, because if you remember, stretching reduces strength and stretching reduces power output. We're mobilising joints, so we're getting joints to move better, which causes an elongation in the muscles as a byproduct, and we're activating some of the key muscles that aid in the movement of that lift. Now from a deadlift perspective, we're going to mobilise the hips, so we're going to get your hips opened up, get them moving well so they're silky smooth like Shakira's hips, and then we're going to move into some activation drills for your trunk muscles and for the deep back muscles. For the purposes of today's mobilisation drills, all you're going to need is a thick resistance band. So piece number one, we're going to now think about mobilising your hip joints. Now with your resistance band attached to something that's sturdy, that you're not going to pull over, we're going to slide the resistance band up around the top of your hip, right into the crease, and then using the other leg, we're going to push ourselves back so we create maximum band tension. So ideally, this bottom leg needs to be completely straight. Taking hold of the knee, you'll find that the resistance band naturally slips into the crease of your hip, and we're going to start moving knee to shoulder, knee to outside of the same shoulder, knee to the opposite shoulder. So knee to shoulder, knee to outside of the same shoulder, knee to the opposite shoulder. Now you repeat this process between 30 and 60 seconds, depending on how tight you feel in your hips, before you swap across and move over onto the other side. So that's piece number one, that's your hip mobility exercise. So piece number two, this is your hip side to side. I couldn't think of anything more imaginative to call it. This is all about not just mobilising the hips, but recruiting the muscles on the inside, the adductors, and the muscles on the outside, the abductors. These two groups of muscle are really important from a hip stability perspective. So if we've woken these muscles up, we've integrated them into the core, you'll find that when you're deadlifting, your hips feel more stable. You get less of that knee dropping into the midline as you're driving away from the floor, and your lift feels better and moves more efficiently. So this is the leg that I'm working, or the hip that I'm working. The other leg, I'm going to turn my leg out so that this front foot is in line with my other knee. So basically I've created an alignment through there. Rib cage down, abdominals braced. So we're always thinking about good spinal alignment and spinal organisation. And then we're going to move from side to side. Now if you notice, this isn't a particularly big movement. So we're going to move inside, trying to keep control of the adductors, outside, keeping control with the abductors. So muscles on the inside are working, muscles on the outside are working. Now as we progress in this movement, I want you to try and take some weight off this leg. So almost imagine this leg is empty, and we're simply controlling the movements with my right side, and just using this, in case we overbalance, we need to create a little bit more stability. So you're going to spend 30 to 60 seconds on the right hip, 30 to 60 seconds on the left hip, and that's your hip side to side. That's piece number two. So piece number three, this is the final piece before you move into your specific deadlift warm-up. This is your bird dog. Now, the key things to think about on your bird dog are making sure that your shoulders are over your hands, your hips are over your knees, and imagine that your back is like a table. And you've got your protein drink on top of your back, and if you move from side to side, you end up spilling your protein drink. So the key thing to think about here is trunk stability. Now we're going to move one leg back, and then that leg comes forwards, and other leg comes back, and other leg comes forwards, and we're going to try and coordinate the opposite arm to the opposite leg. So this is our first progression. And if you can keep your back flat in that position and the thumb facing up towards the ceiling, we can then move into our next progression, which is where you bring the leg away So now creating a bit more instability as we move from left side to right side. Now on this one, I would do 30 seconds and 2 rounds, alternating from left side to right side. That's piece number 3. You're now ready to move into your specific deadlift warm-up.